Please say your name and
Will
outline.
do. Okay, folks. Oh, sure. Eric Italiano for BroBible. All right, folks, today we are joined by Mark Strong. You know him from appearances in films such as Zero Dark 30, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Kingsman, and Shazam. You can see him next as John the Valet in Cruella when it hits theaters in Disney Plus on May 28th. Sir, how are you today?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's an honor to speak to you. I'm a huge fan of yours. Congrats on the film. I loved it, despite the fact that, you know, I'm a 28-year-old dude, so I doubt that I was the film's target demo, but I really found myself enjoying it, grinning ear to ear. So I want to talk to you about your performance. This is a movie with a lot of over-the-top characters and performances in a good way. I think that's what makes it fun, to the point that your character is basically the only one that isn't this sort of larger than life creation. So when you're in a film, does the extraness of other characters influence how you play your role? Are you trying to feed off their energy? How does that impact the way that you play a role when everyone else around you is so outlandish?
Really good question. I mean, when you do theater, for example, you rehearse together. You know, you have a 4, 6, or 8 week performance schedule so that you can all work out what the other person's performance is going to be. When you do film, you literally arrive on set and you have no idea what the other person's going to do. All you can do is prepare the stuff that you've done, bring to the table what you want to bring, and hope that it kind of fits. I mean, you have a brief moment to maybe run the scene before you do it, and the director obviously can push or pull as he sees fit. But yeah, you have to kind of make it up on the spot. But I always knew, though, that those characters were going to be larger than life, because that's the nature of the film. And Craig Gillespie, the director, he said to me, listen, your guy is going to be mysterious. He's going to have a presence. We don't really know what's going on with him. He watches, he listens, pretty much like British butlers or valets traditionally do. And that's going to be the vibe of your guy, because as you know, having seen the movie, there's something that happens in the movie that's kind of very relevant later on. And until that point, you don't really want to know, is this guy a good guy, a bad guy? Who is he?
Well, I think that's the genius of casting you, because they're sort of playing with type, right? And the expectations that we have of you. You're somebody who could play a menacing villain and a warm father figure. Does either type of role stimulate you more creatively? And how does an actor maintain that believability where they could flip back and forth between those two very distinct type of roles that I've seen you do?
I have to confess, and it obviously feels really weird saying this, but I prefer playing the villains. You know, I prefer the bad guy roles. I think the lovely father roles, I mean, they're great, but I can do those in real life. You know, I have some, so I can be a lovely father at home. I can't threaten the kids. I can't exorcise, you know what I mean? I can't exercise that inner anger and rage and evil and nastiness. I mean, it's almost like therapy when you play a part like that, because you're basically doing something that you don't get to do in real life. So it's fun, you know, we're in the world of fiction, so it's fun. And I gravitate to those parts. And also because I find often they have the best costumes and the best lines, and they have really good storylines. You know, they're just great fun. I don't choose them because they're villains or bad. I choose them because often they're the most interesting. If you think of, you know, I don't know, Frank D'Amico in Kick-Ass is a kind of interesting part to play, right. Or, you know, so, or Sherlock Holmes, you know, the Blackwood was interesting. They just happened to be villains. I love
you in that.
Oh, thank you.
Just to play off sort of how you choose roles. I find that Cruella, and you could expand this to your work in Shazam and Kick-Ass and Kingsman. These are franchises, but just because something is a franchise and based on IP doesn't mean it can't be wildly creative and inventive. So does creative integrity factor into your choices when taking on a franchise role?
Yeah, I mean, if you can have that opportunity to do that, then it makes the whole thing much more interesting. What you don't want to do is be shoehorned into something that's just going to be turned out, and you're just part of a team or a machine that's going to run for years and years doing the same stuff. You kind of want, you know, something to be a little bit different. And you know, I feel like the stuff that I choose to do, whether it's the big studio pictures or the little indie movies or even theater. It's all about variety for me. That's the issue. That's the key thing. When I started
Definitely.
out,
As I was going through your films, there's no, and as I just said, I've seen you do the sort of warm father and the outright villain, but there is no one Mark Strong role. And I think that comes very clear across when you go through the films that you've done in the last 10, 15 years or so.
Great. Well, that's been an active choice, because as an actor, when I started out, I wanted to kind of do everything. And once you've played something, you want to have a go at something else, and I can use theater. And I mean, in TV, I'm doing a series at the moment, which is my own show. And it's probably the closest. It's called Temple, and it's on Sky in the UK. And I think it's on Charter in the US, but it's the closest to me probably that I've ever had to play. And it's tricky because you're just being yourself more than anything. I
gotta say, your real voice is a lot less scary than it is in films.
Yeah, well, I have a little microphone that's right here, and I get to drop my voice, and I get to do that. Do you know what I mean? You can do all of that sort of stuff.
So I work. Oh, sorry, Mark. Go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, in real life, obviously, this is me. This is how I sound.
So I work for a site called BroBible. So I would be hung by my thumbs if I didn't ask you about this. Are you aware of how many grown men out there were emotionally affected by your death in Kingsman 2? And do you remember your reaction the first time you read that script?
Yeah, well, well, first of all, what happened was Matthew Vaughn rang me up before I'd even read the script, and he said, "Listen, I think this is what's going to happen to Merlin in the second film." And I was like, "Okay, well, if you feel like that's what needs to happen, then so be it." And when I got to then read the script, and when we got on set to do it, that was the way it was going to be. But remember, it was written by guys, you know what I mean? Mark Miller wrote the original, Matthew Vaughn. Although Jane Goldman had a hand in it, I think it was very much a kind of, it's a guy's death, isn't it? I mean, not only does he get to sing Country Roads, he gets to nut some guy halfway through just to remind you that he's really well,
I think a lot of the reason that it works is because, as I brought up a few times, your ability to play this warm father figure, that's it right there. I find that scene more than most, and not that all guys are rough and tumble, but rarely will you get them to be like, that scene had me bawling. Every single one of my friends is like, man, that death in Kingsman 2 gets me every time.
But they are a gang, aren't they? Those guys, that Harry, Eggsy, and Merlin, they're a team. They've come through the whole of the first thing. They come through the whole of the second. They're interwoven with one another in their lives. And that is the moment of kind of ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah. Love that. So I'm going to ask you about a film that I hope you aren't asked about much today. When do you think Sunshine 2007 is going to get the credit it deserves? Because, man, that is one of my favorite sci-fi films of all time. And you're terrifying.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that was Danny Boyle I'd worked with. I'd done a play with him, and I'd done something on the television with him. We'd never done a movie together, but he got me in and he said, I'm doing this movie, but I don't really know what part. I want you to be in it, but I don't really know what part. I said, has anybody bagged that Pinbacker part? He went, oh no, I think we're going to just get a stunt guy to do that or something, because he's covered in burns and stuff. I went, no, I want to have a go at that one. Because when it was originally written in the script, the idea was that he was almost transparent, so that when you saw him, he was like, he was just sort of burning, but you could see through him.
No kidding.
But when they got on set, what they realized was, in order to sort of dim the lights to make the UV work so that you could see that effect, there wasn't enough light to film the scene. So it became very complicated then. Danny had to make a choice about what to do with Pinbacker. And a bit like the shark in Jaws, he kind of realized you got to try and not see him too early, And actually the first scene, when you first see Pinbacker in that sunroom, is the best.
Oh, and it's the presence of him that's so scary, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible. All right, Mark, real quick, because we got to wrap up. I want to ask you something about your life itself. I've read that you're a Arsenal fan. What do you think about the protests and the sale of the clubs? Because football is my sport, so I'm really tied into this stuff. And I'm just curious what you think about this.
It's just interesting that, the Super League for a businessman makes total sense. So if you're Stan Kroenke or the Glazers who run Man United, to have a Super League makes total sense, because all of the people around the world, they want to watch Barcelona play Chelsea and Real Madrid play Arsenal. They want to watch those teams playing each other. You don't necessarily want to see Burnley versus Fulham. No disrespect to Burnley and Fulham fans, but you know what I mean? So business-wise, it makes sense. What they didn't take into account at all is the fact that it just wipes out everybody else. If you're not one of those teams, everything else suddenly in in the game becomes of so little interest. All of those fans, all of those players, all of those clubs become second rate, and they didn't really factor that in. So it's not a great idea.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you for your time. Great work on the film. Great work in general. I'm a huge fan. Hopefully the next time we cross paths, I could speak to you a little bit more, because this has been a thrill. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks, pal. Nice to talk to you, man.
Take care, Mark.
You too. You too.